All right, good evening, everybody. So tonight, I kind of want to do a dive into the programming software for the Victron 5kVA inverters. So I had recorded walking through the actual software installation and programming setup of the 5kVA inverters weeks ago. And so I want to go back and look at that footage. And then when we're done with that, what I want to do is actually walk through how to program these inverters to ignore the AC input when it's connected. So by default, these inverters are I guess they kind of seem like they're more initially designed for the mobile or the marine aspect, where you're going to be utilizing battery power a majority of the time, but when you have AC input power or shore power available, you want to utilize that power to recharge your batteries. So in this stationary or home environment, well, that kind of changes things up a little bit. So you don't want always to fall back on AC input whenever it's connected. So there's several different ways to program these inverters, and I'm only going to get into one in this video, the simplest one of how to ignore the AC input when your battery is below a certain state of charge, and then have it switch back to battery once it reaches a set threshold. So first off, let's take a look at just my initial impressions of programming these inverters for the first time using the Victron software. And so in order to do this, so these have the VE Bus ports on them. You have to get a separate device specifically for these inverters. And this device is the Mk3 USB VE Bus to USB. So your USB will go into your computer, and then any old Cat5 cable will connect from here into the VE Bus port on the inverter. So we'll get this plugged in. I have not done this yet. I wanted to do this together, get all the twist ties undone. And we'll plug this into our phase 1 inverter. And then we will turn them both on to the on position. So you can see we've got inverter on. And now we need to go to the Victron website and download the software. So looking at the computer here, we go to victronenergy.com, and on the top right hand corner of the page, we'll click the downloads button. And there's going to be a couple different applications we need to download. So the first one will be Victron Connect. So we'll let that download, save it to the desktop. And while that's going, we'll scroll down a little further, VE Configuration Tools, and we'll download that one as well. And again, I haven't done this before, so let's see what happens. We'll install both programs to get started. And we'll just take all the defaults. I'm going to put these on the desktop just because I don't know which ones we need. Alright, so on Victron Connect, list all Victron products you can connect to. Next, got a demo, logs, and settings. Next. So for some reason, it is not detecting. So let's look at our device manager and see if it's actually detecting. There's a USB, so COM3 port. Make sure it's on, charging. Let's try and reconnect. Inverters clicked. All right, MultiPlus-II found. Press to update. I don't want to update. Seems like it's losing connection for some reason. Well, let's try the other program then. Warning, okay. Select our port. So this is finding it. It's not configured for standalone operation. In order to configure devices in a VE Bus system, one must start configurator or quick configure and use the right context menu to start VE config. Okay. So we can't use that one. So let's see here. Was it VE Bus system config? Sure, let's open the tutorial. It's not really a tutorial, more than just a list, but COM port 3. All multi-quattros must be switched on and is not allowed to have other equipment connected during this configuration, except for one of the following. Okay, so it detected a group, L1, L2, split phase. So I think I click. Not really sure what I'm looking at here. Thought this would be simpler. So this is, okay, so this program must be to create the split phase. What about VE config? COM port. And use the right-click context menu to start VE config for the corresponding multi. Thought I tried that and it didn't work. Okay. Oh, okay, so here we go. So you got to right-click here and then VE configure multi. It is kind of confusing having to switch between, what, 3 or 4 or 5 different programs to configure everything and do it all from the computer. Okay, so here's, and I'll have to look at renaming everything. Okay. So if I remember right, this program allows you to do a lot of customization with the multis. It looks older than dirt. I mean, the software kind of flashes me back to the old 90s software. Just very basic looking. But, I mean, if it works, it works. I'm assuming a lot of the advanced configuration has to be done through these different applications, but then I'm not exactly sure how much advanced configuration can be done using the Quattro. I know you can make a lot of little changes, but I don't know how far down the rabbit hole you can get with the Quattro. So one thing I remember seeing from one of the videos Current Connected put out was, because there's so much information in this program, they have a help and then a what is this option, and it puts a little question mark right next to the arrow, and then you can click on any different option and it opens up the help doc for that specific switch, option, value, whatever. So grid, UPS function, low disconnect, okay, so you've got your voltages for AC disconnect. We do not feed into the grid. Because we don't want that. Output voltage 120 volts. Now ground relay, we are going to end up turning this off in inverter 1 because the way my system's configured, we are going to want the ground from the AC in to be used. There is a ground neutral bond there. DC shutdown 48, restart, pre-alarms, charger. All right, so here's our charging values. These were all pre-programmed by Current Connected. Virtual switches drive, multifunction relay. Yeah, there's a lot of information here that I'm going to have to learn about. And then assistance. So yeah, you can do a lot. So on the left, we can see here, 60 hertz, 120 volts, 0.2 of an amp out. So let's close this. Let's just check on L2 and make sure that the ground relay is not turned on this one for now. Grid inverter. So it's turned on the second one as well. So yeah, we'll have to turn it off on both of them because we don't want multiple ground relays. So I believe it's as simple as unchecking that and sending the setting. Oh, this is nice. So you can pick just the modified setting or all settings, and then where do you want to send it? Well, I want the ground relay setting sent to all devices. Please note that grid code related settings will be sent to the other devices even if unmodified. Okay. Click, click. Oh, and I can save the settings and export the settings, so that's good. Let me close this. I just kind of want to rename, I don't know, L1 and L2. Now, do I have to save anything? So let me move this icon here because this is the one that I really want to use. Or what is the quick start? Yeah. Quick start COM3. Okay. Oh, flash LEDs. So now I can see which one it is. That's kind of cool. All right, well, now that I know where I'm going and how to get there, it's not that bad. Just takes a little getting used to. And then, yeah, I'll have to go through all the individual settings and see what I need enabled, what I need disabled. I mean, most of it should be fairly plug and play. I think the only thing that I really needed to pay attention to was that ground relay. But I will be using that what is this option quite a bit, just to be learning a little more. And if I remember right, I think the manual actually goes through and it breaks down a lot of the settings and gives you the descriptions in there as well. So I'll have to refer to that as well. So let me tell you what I figured out in regards to having the inverter ignore the AC input until it gets to a certain state of charge. So we'll look over here at the computer. I've already logged into my leg 1 inverter, and I've done a couple of things here. The big thing that you need to do is you need to come to the virtual switch section, and by default, it is on this drive multifunctional relay. And what you want to do is you want it to be on this dedicated ignore AC input. And actually, there's two different ways to do this. I'm only going to show you the simple way right now because the other way involves assistants, which are like a kind of, they give you the ability for multi-tiered customized programming, basically. So we'll do the easy way right now. So virtual switch, so you change your usage to dedicated ignore AC input. And then you look at this ignore AC input tab. And this you can program so that if your inverter surges and requests too much power for a certain amount of time, it can use the grid as a grid assist to help cover that power. And so normally these two options here are turned off. I left them at the defaults. I picked 10 seconds and 1 minute based on the assistant values when I was researching the assistants, because these are the defaults for the assistants. But I left the watts the same. So if the load gets above 4,549 watts for 10 seconds, the grid connection will kick in. And then when you're in that grid assist connection, if the load drops below 1,136 watts for 1 minute, then the grid will disconnect. So we enabled both of those, and all we had to do is we clicked in here and we set the new values. And then the battery conditions. So we do not want the battery to be ignored when the state of charge is lower, and I just picked 15% just to test it out. I didn't want to mess with the voltage. Unfortunately, there's no state of charge to turn the grid back off. You have to do it based on voltage. You can do it when the bulk's finished, assuming you're charging. Both of these first two, bulk finished and absorption finished, assuming that you're using the grid to charge your batteries. I just did when it looks like UDC, but I think it's supposed to be VDC, voltage DC. So when the voltage DC is 53 volts for 5 minutes, then it will start ignoring the AC connection again. And then the other thing that I had to do, I actually came in here and I turned the charger off for right now. I need to figure out how to customize if I want that charger turned on dynamically. But for the time being, I don't want to charge from the grid. I want to use solar to charge my batteries up. I am researching how to customize some relays and some options to be able to use the Cerbo to actually turn the charger on and off dynamically or manually, really. But for the time being, I just turned it off. Now there is one setting that we have to turn on on the Cerbo in order to share that value. And that's DVCC. And I'll show you that here in a minute as well. And then you send the settings, and then I just set them to all devices because both of them need to be the same. So then I also mentioned that I needed to enable DVCC. So you go into the settings, and right there, DVCC. So you enable that option. I don't want the first two to limit charge voltages, but I want it to share the voltage and the temperature and the current between all the devices. And what that actually does is that actually shares those values between all the different connected devices. And that really ends up helping because we looked at it before, but the link shunt, the voltage value is like 150 to 250 millivolt difference between what I read off of the bus bars. And so all the different devices are reading different voltages, but if I share the voltage from the shunt, then all the inverters and the charge controllers see that same voltage based on the shunt voltage. So all in all, my initial thoughts of programming the MultiPluses, you know, I've got mixed feelings. I'm not all that thrilled with the fact that to change most of the settings, I actually have to use a Windows computer. They do make a way that you can not have to have the, what do they call this thing? The Mk3 to USB device. They make a way that you can configure things by downloading the configuration file through the VRM. But then you still have to open up that configuration file on a Windows machine. Make your changes, and then you upload through the VRM, and it uploads to these inverters. I mean, the software, I'm kind of having flashbacks to the 90s. You would think that for somebody that designs the VRM the way it looks, I mean, that looks great. And then you jump into this software, and it's just kind of like, ugh. So, I mean, it is what it is. There's not a whole lot you can do with it. I was hoping that the Cerbo could do a lot of the programming changes, but depending on what changes you're looking to make, it might require a reset of the inverter. So, I don't know. I guess for most people, you're going to set the values and then you're never going to touch it again. Or if you do, it's going to be once in a great, great while. Me, I play with things a lot. So it means that I'm going to be stuck having to load stuff on a Windows machine. I mean, if nothing else, I wish that they had the stuff that could be loaded on a Mac instead of just a Windows machine. I know I can do the whole virtual machine thing like I showed with the 6500s, but like I said, it is what it is. There's not a whole lot I can do about it. I do like the customization options that I'm seeing in the software. I like the detailed help, but you saw at the beginning, there's like 4 different applications, and it took me a while as a brand new user to figure out what application am I supposed to be using for what again? I get it now, but in the beginning, it seems like I wasted a lot of time trying to figure that out. I know it's something that I'm not too thrilled about. We'll just say that. Out of all the niceties of the Victron system so far, the way I have to program things is probably one of the negatives that I would look at. And I look at that from my specific standpoint of being able to make a lot of changes randomly, dynamically. I know I can control certain things from the Cerbo and from the VRM, but I can't make a lot of programmatic changes. They're fairly basic things. With that, I'm gonna let y'all go. Y'all stay safe, stay cool, and we'll catch up with you later. So when I woke up this morning, the inverters were at 15% stated charge, but that's the value that I had to have the inverters switch over to pass-through mode, which would stop pulling power from the batteries and then just pass through grid power to the loads. And nothing had changed.
it was still pulling from the battery. So I started getting ready for the morning. I will admit, the one thing that I didn't do, this is probably the first time that I've actually consciously not done something due to the load on the system. And I didn't take a shower this morning. Yeah, I know. Whew. I'll take one later this afternoon. But at 15%, I didn't want to, risk the system not switching over to pass-through and have the power go out when I'm in the middle of my shower. So I did not do that this morning. But while I was getting ready, I was brewing a pot of coffee and everything, and the coffee pot overflowed, which is a whole nother story. But by the time I got all that cleaned up and I came downstairs, I looked at the VRM again, and it said pass-through mode. I was like, yes. Because I honestly wasn't sure if it was going to work because the MultiPluses weren't reflecting any state of charge. So I wasn't really certain that it was actually going to be able to know, hey, here's 15% state of charge, we got to switch. But let me show you what I see. So we came into the utility room, and we can see the inverters say mains on, and we look at the crummy display. Sorry for the flickering, but it's just a quick image. But you can see grid and pass-through, and we're at 15% state of charge. So that's awesome. Now that I know that it actually works, now I can tweak and fine-tune the different settings based on where I want the system to be before it switches back to grid. But I'm happy to say it actually switched over to grid like it was supposed to, and I didn't have to go flip any switches. We didn't lose any power. I was actually worried that we were going to lose power throughout the middle of the night and not find out till the morning. But it works.